Hey everybody, Dave here with Adora Audio, and I have something kind of cool I wanted to share with you today. So, I've been working on an application called Kronos Screen Remote, and it's a little different than the one you might have heard of before that was on the iPad. This one is actually a remote control for the Kronos, but I'm going to walk you through what that kind of looks like. So, when you first launch the application, it needs to point at the Kronos. It needs an IP address. So this requires Ethernet. You can't do this over USB. What you do need to do, if you're going to use USB, is you need a USB to Ethernet adapter that's supported by the Kronos. And there's a big list of them that exist, but that's one thing that you will need. Either that, or you can be crazy like me and cut a hole in the bottom of your Kronos and run an Ethernet cable straight into the motherboard. That being said, I have that part figured out already, so this is plugged into my network. It says no address is configured. We're going to start off by putting that in under the connection. And this application does require FTP credentials. That way, not just anyone can randomly connect to your Kronos. There is some basic authentication there. So by default, it's Kronos and Kronos. I didn't change it. That's fine. So I'm going to hit OK. Now this is not going to just automatically connect. There is a daemon that needs to get installed, and I'll walk you through how to do that. But for the moment, I do have it installed. I'll leave the links in the little dooflicky below. I'll give you the repo links so you can get all of that stuff, download it, and install it. So this is actually the Kronos screen. It's streaming the screen from frame buffer 1. So there's FB0, FB1. FB0 is like a monitor that's plugged in. So FB1 is the actual frame buffer that gets sent to the front of the Kronos. The idea here is, and you may be able to hear my Kronos behind me, as I click stuff, it's actually updating the Kronos live. So this is the Windows version. There's a few different things. So I tried to include some of the standard interface things. I didn't include the live interface stuff because typically like those sliders, the knobs, karma control, those kinds of things you're going to be using and manipulating while you're playing. This is more of the while you're editing. Basic navigation's all there. So all of your touchscreen inputs work the exact same way as if you're literally sitting in front of the Kronos. Same thing with like the modal buttons. So if you hit combi, program, global, it's all there. Right down to when you press help, it shows you that you're looking at the help button. And you can click on stuff and like navigate the same way you would with the Kronos. Um, Little things like when you're in combi mode, if we were to edit a program, when you're editing a program, the program light flashes to let you know. It detects what mode that you're currently in, so you know that, yes, I'm currently editing. And I mean, you'll see it on the interface anyway, but it's a nice kind of visual reminder. So one of the questions immediately then is, how do I install the daemon? The daemon comes as a zip file, and what you need to do is you actually need to extract the zip file um, onto a USB stick, onto the root of the USB stick. Once that's done, you can go into global mode, plug in the USB stick, and you hit update system software. I'll actually do this right now so you can see kind of the process. So when it comes to getting the Kronos daemon, this is the thing that gets installed on your core Kronos itself. I'll leave the links below. The daemon itself installs the same way you install a system update. It works the exact same way. It focuses primarily on systems that are based off of Linux, not Korg systems. So we don't modify any Korg files. We don't do anything to Korg stuff. We only do stuff with Linux. And so in theory, this should work on virtually any version of the Kronos OS, but I've only tested it on 3.2.1.2 and so on. These are the ones that I know it works on. It'll probably work on like 3.12, 3.14, like those versions. But because I haven't tested it, I can't guarantee that that is absolutely the case. So it's kind of, install at your own risk. To download it, you can click on this link here on the right-hand side and just download the zip file. And when you download the zip file, you have to extract it. And like any Korg update, once it's downloaded and extracted, when you open up the file, it will download a couple of files inside of a zip. So you've got an installer and an uninstaller. And yes, I purposely built an uninstaller. So if you decided you don't want it anymore, You can uninstall it. It'll just remove all of the files. Any of the log files are stored in the FTP directory, so you actually have access to delete them manually or look at them if you wanted to. But I tried to minimize the amount of log writing because, I mean, it's not unnecessary, but it takes up hard drive space for no reason. So this is the installer. And what you would do is you would take these files, copy them, and put them on the root of a USB stick. So here I go. I've got a USB stick here with a bunch of Kronos stuff on it, and I'm putting it on the root. So I'm gonna unplug that from my computer. I'm gonna plug it in my Kronos, and we're actually gonna walk through the process. So if I open up Kronos Screen Remote, here we go. We're gonna go to global mode, which we're already in. Under basic setup here, you're going to go update system software. In the same way that you would update your system software with any software update, it's really a software installer. It's Linux based, it's a script that runs. And so when you hit OK, it found Kronos Screen Remote, or in this case, I just called it Screen Remote, and this is the version number. So I'll hit OK to install it. It's actually going to go through the install and put this, it's going to stop the version that's running right now. Okay, so it stops the version that's running, so we don't see anything anymore. And eventually down at the bottom here, yeah, it's going to disconnect. So we can see that it's disconnected because the Kronos itself has actually done the update. So I'm going to turn the Kronos off and turn it back on. So you can see my Kronos is booting up. And so this is, it basically adds itself as part of the kind of startup routine. And I did my best to make sure that it's performant, but the sound engine always takes priority, always, always, always. So this will run in the background. So if you're playing like big combis that take up a lot of, processor power and so on, it will slow down. It will drop frames, and that's absolutely intentional to make sure that it doesn't interfere with what the Kronos is meant to do, which is perform, right? So it uses a low amount of CPU. It sits idle in the background, and if you're not connected to it, it really does nothing but just idly listens to a specific port waiting for a connection to come in. Well, the software lets you do a lot of the things that you would do typically in front of a Kronos. So yes, you can click and drag on stuff, and it's really, really not sensitive. I would say it's really performant. And there's a couple of modes that you can be in when it comes to how this is streaming. So you have pull, which is your high performance mode. This is going to put a little bit more, not strain, but it'll ask more of your Kronos. So it pulls every single frame, or you can say change driven, and this will only update when frames change, right? So if nothing changes, you'll notice the frames per second will drop down to virtually nothing. If I go crazy and start moving things around a lot, you can see the frames go up and so on. There's also kind of a capture mode where you'll notice this little keyboard. If I click in here, it means it's capturing my actual physical keyboard, so I can leave notes. Any typing you do is captured as well, so I can clear this. I can say this is a keyboard that I like to use. Great. And I try to include as many kind of default macros as well. So like Control A will select everything, and you can hit delete and it goes away. But you have the ability to make your own macros. So if there's common things that you want to do, there's nothing involving touchscreen yet. Maybe that'll be something down the road where you can like click on familiar spots and then you can just run the macro over and over and over and over if there's something that you're doing for a bunch of sounds, like renaming or something. But in this case, these are all kind of keyboard input based macros. But yes, you can record your own macros. You can also do things like drag, right? The same way you could on the actual Kronos, the same way you'd like tap with your finger and move it up and down. You can do that. You can use the value slider. So this works as a functional input. If you are trying to get it exactly 64, you can double click and it just defaults to center. So you don't have to, but it's a nice kind of quick thing. Your standard, increment, decrement inputs. You've got your wheel as well, so you can move that up and down, which is also controllable by your mouse scroll. So if you want to scroll using your mouse, it'll go one at a time. And all the usual buttons. These buttons can all be assigned to like function keys. So if you wanted to set like program mode to F3, Set list is F2. We're already in combi mode, so I'm not clicking anything. I'm actually hitting the function keys up here. So like F6 brings me to sampling, F7 brings me to global. So one of the things that you can do is with the number pad can be used with direct input from your keyboard. This, you can press these buttons this way, or as long as the keyboard input is captured, you can press them using your number pad and it'll actually directly input as though you're typing here. So the difference is if you type 1 through 10 on the letter or the numbers above your keyboard, it's the same as inputting like numbers. The calibration mode allows you to do some really cool stuff. It should just automatically be perfect, ideally, by default. So the default kind of configuration, you don't need to adjust anything. But what you can do is if something's not quite hitting right, there's some things that you can do, like, for example, let's say I'm trying to toggle between these two. Okay, notice how it's not working. Well, as soon as it does, I can right click and leave a little dot, right? And so I know I was trying to click here where my mouse is, but when I click here, that's where it actually input. Well, what you can do is you can just move things over. You can move it until the dot is where it was trying to click in the first place. Um, and so like you can see I put dots around stuff to say, okay, well, it didn't work here, but it did work here. Like this drop down is a really important one. If you're clicking close to it, it doesn't open. Now, I'm going to kind of reset it completely back to factory. I'm going to clear all my dots and I'm going to save it that way because the default is actually like pretty precise. It's within, a degree of accuracy error, but I mean it's meant to um, this input is like 1 pixel big versus your finger, which inputs a whole bunch. So as long as you're in the vicinity, Korg's been really good about making sure like you don't have to tap here exactly. You can tap very, very close to, right? And it kind of averages and figures that out. So that's cool. Okay. There's some other things too that are kind of handy. For example, there's a keyboard info mode. And this is going to pull information from the Linux kernel directly. So it gives you like your CPU usage, your kernel memory, how much space you have on your hard drives at a quick glance. And I found this really, really useful instead of going in disk mode and going to media and looking. But it also tells you what is the current temperatures of the board, how hot is it, and there's a couple of different sensors. I think it's like two of them are motherboard, one of them CPU, or it could be backwards about that. But anyway, when I'm making combis, um, or I'm in setlist mode and I'm trying to level all of my sounds so that they're all even, going from one sound to another, or one's a little bit louder than another. I added a VU meter. So this meter here, I can choose my devices. In this case, I'm going to say Kronos. And now on the Kronos, when I play something, it's going to capture the Kronos output and it's going to show you roughly what those outputs are. And you can validate that by going to, your master volume and looking. So it says it's 120, meaning it's got 7 more that it can go up, but we're getting pretty close to peaking. I've tried to calibrate it as closely as possible from, you know, like if we turn this way down, you'll see it's pretty quiet. We crank it way up, it gets pretty close. The great thing about the uh, daemon, it's got a fully documented API. So basically, as long as you authenticate correctly, send the correct data packets, and are authenticating with the correct information according to the Kronos, you can use this as well. So you could use just the daemon by itself on a Kronos and develop your own interface, your own controls, your own however you want. So this is not something that is tied to this application. In fact, this version that I'm running here is the Python version. And for people who have asked for it on Mac or who have asked for it in Linux, generally speaking, it's the same thing. It does a lot of the same stuff, and I did my best to ensure that the majority of functionality that exists between one works in both. So I can enable and disable the screen um, the VGA mirror. It has macros. Um, there are key bindings, again, like the different, you know, F6, F7, so on and so forth. All of the stuff, I've tried to keep it as close to as possible. So again, change driven, you can disable the boot graphics. You still have to authenticate. That is built into the daemon itself. So you're not just, you can't just connect. There's a piece to it that is necessary. But it works exactly the same way. You still have things like your calibration page, and it all functions the same way. So you can like leave dots and move them around, right? Or you can just clear them, clear all the dots, reset it to normal, save it, and then get out of that mode. You can still drag and kind of scroll. You still have your value slider, which latches the same way, and if you double click it, it'll put it back to center, whatever the center value is. In this case, 0 to 100, the 50 is in the middle. I have tested this on my 14-year-old Mac, and it works great. It seems to be okay. Lots of cool stuff. Um, so this is available right now. It is free. I'm not charging for it. There's no ads, there's no pop-ups, there's no me asking you to pay money for any of this. This kind of thing being like a labor of love, we'll say. Um, I don't want the money. I want people to be able to use this, and it's just out there to make your life a little bit easier because it's hard enough as it is, right? So another thing that this software can do under connection, there's a built-in file manager. And so that file manager is really useful because it is actually, because we're connected over Ethernet, it's just a built-in quick access to FTP. So let me show you what that looks like. And what we're looking at here is the file manager for the Kronos. So this is an FTP. It's basically a simple FTP engine. You can do basic things like copy and paste. You can, create new folders, delete files or folders. You can rename stuff. You can refresh. Like it's pretty simple. Um, it is live though, because we've already got an Ethernet connection. What we're seeing on disk mode is actually what is here. So for example, factory, if I've got a particular file I wanted to move over, or if I wanted to delete, I could. If I wanted to move files around from like my personal stuff, like Uptown Funk, I could take this, I could copy it to my computer, I could move it back over. You can do stuff like right click and say copy. And if I wanted to put it somewhere else, well, actually, I'm going to create a new folder. I'll call it test. There. I can open that up, hit paste. There we go. You need to refresh it. Like I said, it's still early. I have to fix like little bugs like that. It's not really a super big bug. It's still functional. It's just one of those things where I'll have to make sure it refreshes automatically on, pastes and things like that. But anyway, so um, yeah, SSD one. So if I were to go back to close this and I just, there we go, it refreshes, I can open it up and we can see it's right there. And actually I find this a little bit easier to work with. Let's say I wanted to delete this. I have to go to utility, I have to make sure it's highlighted, hit drop down, hit delete, right? Like there's a bunch of, steps. Go, oh, it's SSD1, test, and I could just hide it, select it, hit delete, and off it goes. That's it. If you have questions, if you find bugs, let me know. Um, I'd love to hear your feedback and hope you find it useful.